what I do want to find out, are we actually calling ourselves Olympics, or is that going to be really awkward?
We had this discussion before you came, Matty, and the general consensus, I think, certainly between me and Charlie, is that it's going to bite us in the arse at some point.
And no one wants Olympic to bite them in the arse.
No.
That will be the tagline. So, welcome everyone to this first gathering of we 4, because there is an invisible one down here on my screen, but you probably can't see him at all, of we Legions Imperialis internet presence people. See, bet you wish we were calling ourselves Olympics now. Yes, welcome. We're here to discuss the very important and vital discussion that is what the hell is going to be shown for Legions Imperialis on the 18th of this very month, this very week, in fact. I don't know about the rest of you, but it'd been so long since anything new was teased for us that when they showed that these are the systems we're going to talk about on Warhammer Community, I kind of did an almost cartoony double take. It was what? Legions Imperialis? Why, that's my game. How did you feel when you saw that crop up?
I saw it come up on the email that came through, and it was, oh, okay, that's interesting, because we just had the Warhammer World event, and I was kind of hoping that wasn't going to be it for a while. They would do an event and then just forget about it, because that's enough for all of the players. So to have something so soon after that, I was quite excited about.
Yeah, I sadly couldn't be with you for that one. I went to the first one, but unfortunately I was celebrating my wedding anniversary.
Not good enough.
Not good enough. It's not good enough. Lack of dedication is what it is. Yeah. How about you, Charlie? How did you feel seeing those beautiful words on that beautiful red and black background?
I was surprised, especially with the ongoing release of the new edition of the Horus Heresy. I didn't really think we'd see anything for Legions Imperialis until beyond, that initial wave of releases. So I was definitely very surprised, but like you said, gratified that we're finally getting something after, I think it's been 6-7 months now, as far as I can recall.
No, we got the Karachnos in early May, didn't we?
Yeah, but they were kind of announced. They weren't
That's
even
true.
announced. They were in the book long before. So I think we all assumed they were out because we were all proxying our Triaros as them for a while. I have here a very official looking list of suggestions from my commenters, because obviously when I got that email through, I put a post on YouTube saying, we're getting something. What do you think it's going to be? And lots of people had some ideas. Some of them I'm sure we all agree with. Others of them I think are a little bit tongue-in-cheek. For example, the very first comment was, this will be the Ultramarines expansion. But that's not. Most of the suggestions are far more serious. 2 of them have more than 5 people thinking it. So I might save those to last unless it comes up naturally in conversation. But in the meantime, I've got a list of some of the things people think. What I think is the least likely of them was someone who just simply commented orcs. I think, that's
not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. It's a bold claim. I wish it were. If this Legions Imperialis update is, we're taking it to the 41st millennium now, lovely. But I don't suppose that's happening just yet. But if you out there want the epic scale to come back to the 41st millennium, buy lots of Legions Imperialis stuff from reputable sources and boost up their sales. Make them realize how important epic scale is to nerds such as we. So anyone else, before I start reading more of my list, who's got some ideas of where you think we're going next? And I'll tell you if anyone agrees with you.
I think while we're talking about new factions, something I think is interesting is obviously in the FAQ and errata that came out, they changed some of the rules for how psychic stuff worked. which made me wonder if they were planning to do some kind of psychic release at some point. So maybe Demons of the Ruined Storm alongside Custodes, which is something that gets talked about a lot, but may not happen. But I think I'd be excited to see it if it did happen.
That was definitely one of the suggestions, was suggesting Talons of the Emperor and Demons. I don't know whether they'd come out together, especially because we haven't got plastic demons yet. But if they are thinking of releasing plastic demons, then maybe they'll use the opportunity a bit like they did with the Solar Auxilia stuff to kind of release in parallel. Like, here is one scale and here's the other scale. Now that all we have to do is take the CAD and shrink it on a computer screen, and then very, very clever people, one of whom I've met, but I won't say who because I don't know if they're supposed to be talking about it out of work, told me about some of the process of how they were changed and adjusted, and arguments in particular that were had about those undercuts in the Space Marines and about whether it was better to have them more monopose or get the variety of poses but settle for undercuts. And this was apparently an internal discussion, and the result of that in the online fallout is why a lot more of the Adeptus Mechanicus models are multi-piece. And to be honest, after putting together about 12 bases of the Vorax, I wish they just had undercuts. So I'm definitely on the side of, please don't let me put another Vorax together.
I mean, they did have. I noticed recently in the Titan rules in the basic rule book, they do mention about big creatures and things. So it's not just talking about Titans. And I'd never noticed that before. So that does, I mean, unless they're doing the giant orc beasties, it does point to some sort of demon.
They've definitely left lots of gaps for that to come around, haven't they?
Yeah. And by the same token, we know, I think it was in the most recent book, there was might even be in the book before that, there was a Sikaran Venator.
Yes.
Which doesn't exist yet, but it was right next to Iron Warriors formation or something that said, oh yeah, you can take some Sikarans. Not Venators because they don't in the game yet, but they are definitely things they're sitting on. And I hope they're not sitting on demons too hard for the sake of the demons and their bottoms. So, in terms of new factions, certainly Talons might well come out. I think we've already got most of the Custodes and Sisters in plastic, and not only are they in plastic, but we've had the evil, inverted commas, traitor only Dark Mechanicum. So we kind of need a Imperial equivalent, because at the moment there's no Emperor only faction, unless you count the Psi Titan as an entire faction, which, maybe. But yeah, there's not really an example of a loyalist only faction. And
they do have that Aeronautica Imperialis Legions Custodes flyer that was in resin only, but that would be an easy win for them to put into plastic and release as a flyer for Custodes.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just reminding me of the beauty that was that very limited edition resin Tyranid Haradan at epic scale in the new Forge World style, which unfortunately is impossible to find now. It's one of the few Tyranid models of any scale I don't own. So if anyone out there has one of those resin Forge World Haradans and wants to be paid an ungodly amount of money for it, hit me up in the comments. Others of the options we've got, which just had one or two people, more realistically, have just been a few different ideas about new infantry types. For example, Melter Tactical Marines, Plasma Tactical Marines, and those again, they're sort of future-proofing in the rules, particularly the Imperial Fists rules that says infantry with this kind of weapon can use this bonus, but there currently isn't any infantry with that kind of weapon. So certainly, however they choose to package them, a bigger variety of infantry is likely at some point. How they're packaged, I don't know. But yeah, Melter Tacticals, ranged Velatari, because if they're giving us more Space Marine infantry, they'll probably give us more Solar. Yeah, I'm not sure how much of the I know we accept the Talons and Talons of the Emperor as being present, but I'm not sure how many of the other little niche sub factions will get in. One person suggested Sly Marbo with a steel chair, which I'm entirely for, and if we don't get it, I will be lit bashing it. So fingers crossed. Yeah, otherwise that'll be the most bizarre suggestion I've ever taken on board, but I think that would be fun.
A gap with the solar light armor. There isn't anything for that, and yet it features in the formations. Are there any other examples of that where we've got a slot that cannot be filled?
The one
Space
that's
Marines
in my
artillery.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Space Marine artillery.
Yeah. So that's two good things that they could that would be an easy win, and also is filling out what they've got at the moment that people are itching to play.
Yeah. So what would we have for what would count as Space Marine artillery? Would we be thinking Vindicators, Whirlwinds?
Is there is the Typhon that mortar thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a backwards Sakaran, I think, and it has a couple of weapon options.
We've just gotten a Vindicator for big scale, haven't we? So that's probably one that would be quite a likely one to see crop up.
Yeah, I think on both sides, anything that's recently come out in plastic 8mm probably is going to be coming out in plastic in 28 and vice versa, considering the pattern we've seen so far. You know, the biggest case in point with that is the entire Solar range, which kind of went from fully resin to fully plastic overnight, with the Legion stuff being that little transition period in between.
The most obvious candidate that falls in line with that is going to be the Fellblade, right? That just got announced in plastic. I think that's the most obvious thing in my mind, is that we'll probably see a box of Fellblades, and probably variants for Legions Imperialis.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think that's going to be printing money for GW. I think that's going to be really, really popular because we want something bigger. Everyone else has a super heavy, and we don't. So yeah, I think I think that they'd be silly to miss a trick by not doing that in the next release.
That was by far the most suggested comment. That one had 6 being stingy in terms of how many people wanted, or at least predicted, Space Marine Super Heavies. Some just said bigger Space Marine tanks, and I didn't count those, but if they specifically said Fellblades or Space Marine Super Heavies, then I did a little tally, and yeah, there's 6 comments saying that. So that's the most popular suggestion we have. Can anyone guess what the second most popular suggestion is?
Anti-air for the Solar Auxilia. Some kind of Lehman Russ chassis.
No one suggested that, actually. That's a very good idea. We need more. In general, I think I'm torn whether we need more anti-air or not, because on the one hand, aircraft always seems incredibly scary on the board, but the more I play the game, the less points efficient it seems, particularly because of how much of an objective game it is. People are very, very scared to hover at all, to the point that, for example, the Thunderhawk, people don't think of putting anything except for assault marines in it. It's like, oh, but you could put, Terminators in it and getting them assaulting, and they go, yeah, but I'd rather do that in a much less flimsy Spartan, or I'll just deep strike them in and take a turn and wait, rather than risk spending all that money on a Thunderhawk and spending all those points on a Thunderhawk and then it going to the first bit of Overwatch that rolled lucky. But certainly, I think anti-air is useful, or at least mobile anti-air, because lots of the anti-air platforms, you put them down, create these nice bubbles, and then everyone just remembers that one space on the board that they're not being covered, and they'll shoot anything they can reach. And if they can't shoot anything, then they won't. Which does take the fun out slightly.
But if you do get air superiority, it's a game changer, literally, because you can just pick off the units that you don't want and just move across the board doing that without fear of really getting shot down. So it's it's a problem at the beginning when you've still got some anti-air in there. But if you can get rid of that, then air power just makes you win the game if you can take advantage of it.
Certainly, when I went to the first Legions Imperialis Warhammer World event, the scariest forces were the ones that had lots and lots of bombers. You send your little dudes marching forward, and then suddenly bombing run, they're all gone.
Yeah.
Whether that's worth not having your own little dudes to have a bomber, I don't know. But certainly, I think the game really could benefit from more good options of all kinds, so it doesn't just become a who can fit the most infantry on the board. Not that there's anything wrong with infantry. If they went the other way and no one was using infantry, that would be worse. The reason we're playing this game rather than Adeptus Titanicus is because the whole army looks more fun than just a couple of big god machines. But at the same token, the big god machines should be good as well. A couple of people, speaking of god machines, said they'd like to see an Imperator. Do you think we're there yet? Or
I think they'll hold out on that as long as they possibly can.
I can tell you the one way we can guarantee them releasing it is if I do a lip bashing video making one. As soon as I make that, they'll release it the next day. So if anyone does want to see the Imperator, I'll just lip bash one. That's the only reason I've never kit bashed a full scale Tyranid Dominatrix, is because I know the moment I finish it, it'll be released.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I don't think they're going to do an Imperator anytime soon, because you can't really build it without it looking a bit silly. And at the moment, everything in Legions looks really, really cool. And having something with a building on the top, no. Even with is it the Warbreaker that someone else has released? It still looks a bit. Remember that film Mortal Engines, which should have been cool on paper, and if you read the books, it was good in your head. But when you actually saw it, sort of St. Paul's driving around on tank wheels, it just took you out of it. And I think that would be the same. I think they would leave that for as long as possible, until they didn't have anything else left before risking that, because it is just going to look a little bit silly.
Do you not think people would buy it anyway?
Oh yeah, of course. I'll buy 10, but it's still going to look a little bit silly. And at the moment, it all looks so good that I don't think I don't think they'd risk it, because I mean they haven't sort of really done anything more with Titans apart from the initial set that they've got. So yeah, I think tank action is where it's at. If I had to make a prediction.
Well, if we're going for big tanks rather than big walkers, is it the Capital Imperialis, that really massive, just a giant slug of a vehicle that was just basically like a city on wheels rather than a city on legs? That's possible. There's the Stormbird if we want something even bigger than a Thunderhawk. If we want to go for the really, really big.
Yeah, the Stormbird would be nice.
Yeah, I think the Stormbird is a good option. I can definitely see them releasing that at some point. I'm not sure about the Capital Imperialis. I think that's from an earlier age of Games Workshop where things were a little bit more, what's the right word? Gonzo? Is that the word, where things were a little sillier?
I think it's the word you're looking for. Fun.
Fun. Sorry. Yeah. I just don't think it fits the aesthetic that they're trying to promote lately, but maybe.
I mean, they could update it. I don't know what they do to it. I feel like updating it would be making it smaller more than anything, which kind of ruins the point. I would love to see, and again, these are things that are on my list of things I'd love to kit bash at some point, all the kind of specific Titans and Walkers for the individual legions, particularly the Chaos Legions. So I already had a crack at the Banelord, but there's an equivalent for Slaanesh, and I can't remember his name, but that's basically a scorpion on legs. That Slaanesh Titan is excellent, and I'd love to see that. If we had the Eldar, there's loads that the Eldar had in terms of the Bright Stallion and other things, but in the 31st millennium, I think it's mainly the slightly chaosy ones that would be nice to see.
What do you think, or what does everyone think about new terrain and structures? Because we've only had the civitas so far, which is the stuff made of balsa wood. But all the heavier stuff, the military grade fortifications, do you think that that was that on your list, Matty, from your
No one suggested any scenery. I think there should be. I think there should be, like you say, more different scenery options in terms of the heavier stuff. But I also think more kind of prefab scenery. I really love the kind of Lego style build whatever you like, but there are some really kind of iconic images of scenery that we have in the 28mm stuff. Like, yeah, we've got the equivalent kind of Imperialis where you just get flat bits and put them together. But then you've got the big kind of structures. You've got the bastions. You've got the plasma annihilators. You've got the void shield generators. You've got those ones that are quite iconic silhouettes that you can't make, or at least can't easily make, out of the Lego type put them together however you like style. So I'd like to see some more options like that. I don't know how much of a diminishing return scenery is for Games Workshop. I think the fact that it's the only plastic that they ship out from China rather than doing in-house probably says something that it's not as profitable for them.
Maybe, but if you were to, if you wanted a themed release and you were doing artillery for Astartes, and also sort of super heavies with big guns on them, it could be a good way of sort of tying all of that together. You've got these things that can blow up walls. Here, have some even bigger walls that you can't blow up unless you roll double sixes every time.
I would be really interested in seeing more different terrain types and sort of more themed battlefields, and maybe things with a bit more going on than just here's a building. It'd be quite nice to have some sort of gun emplacements and stuff. I feel like that sort of thing really lends itself to this scale of game. Like points that you can capture and then maybe do things with would be quite exciting. I wonder if that's maybe too complicated to be adding that sort of thing in, but it'd be kind of fun to have some sort of more thematic terrain.
Yeah, I've always been very impressed by the terrain that they've put out for Age of Sigmar. I think it is where they're very detailed, and they have very specific game purposes or game functions too, I believe. I'm not a Age of Sigmar player, so feel free to correct me on that. But I think that would be an easy way that Games Workshop could introduce some more terrain variety while also giving it some terrain function. You could have some kind of special bunker, maybe, that provides command and control. In the old black books in the Istvan 3 campaign, I think, they had a lot of really cool ideas for terrain that was specific to the biome, the campaign front that you were fighting over. And that was keyed to like the firebombing, the destroyed city, the coral city, all of this stuff. And it seems to me like releasing themed terrain in that vein for each new campaign book, and that would also tie into the game rules and expand them and make them more interesting.
Something that Age of Sigmar kind of has done, certainly since the start of second, probably a little bit into first as well, and that 40k has just started doing, is faction-specific terrain. So it's kind of gone back and forth about whether it costs points or whether it's included, or Age of Sigmar has gone back and forth about whether it uses points or not. But there's this idea that every faction has its own faction terrain that you can use, and you spend points on it as a bastion or just have it as a feature of the battlefield. And again, I feel like that's in many ways easier at 8mm scale, because you could just do a box of tiny buildings that just look together in 3 pieces, and that is some faction specific terrain, and you could probably get away, not to tell capitalists how to capitalist, but you could probably get away with packing it all together so that people, by definition, have to buy the stuff they don't need. And you end up with other people's faction terrains, because this comes with some Solar Auxilia faction terrain and some Adeptus Mechanicus faction terrain. Oh, now I've got both because they came in the same box. Well, I've got some of the other people's faction terrain. I might as well buy more of those models, and then you end up with what my garage looks like. So, I'm sure there's plenty of opportunities for them to pack them together. In terms of packing together, the other thing that got multiple votes was Primarchs, which I know they teased really early on. I still don't think. I know it's a specialist game, and I know some of the Titan and Knight bits still use resin. I don't imagine there'll be resin infantry at this scale. So I'd imagine similarly, if they're going to do Primarchs, that would probably be a multi-pack of maybe the Loyalist Primarchs together and the Traitor Primarchs together, which again leaves you with a whole load you may never use, but as little painting projects, they'd probably be great.
The way I'd quite like to see that, if they were going to do Primarchs, is to be like, rather than packing a bunch of Loyalists that you'll never use, be like, here's a box of, Blood Angel specific stuff. You get Sanguinius, you get loads of Assault Marines, you get like a few extra things that are specific to that chapter. And then you can sort of be building your army theme more strongly, sort of starting from this box. It's almost like a little starter box for that chapter. Would be quite nice, I think.
That would be incredibly sexy to have like a sprue of, winged demon Fulgrim, tiny normal Fulgrim, a whole bunch of Cacophony and Palatine Blades. Even if they don't have their own rules, they could be used as command bases for others. They could be, dotted here and there to just give your force a little bit more of a theme, like you say. The only downside to that is if they shared a sprue, we'd probably be looking at single sprue kits, probably for the price of double sprue kits, because I don't think they'd want to give you two Fulgrims in, like two of the same type of Fulgrim in a kit. But I also don't think they'd charge cheaper for it only being one, especially if it contains a Primarch. Yeah. But the what do they call it? They're really stupidly expensive flyers where you only get one sprue of it for some reason in the Space Marines.
Oh, is it Fire Raptors?
No, the Fire Raptors you get two, but at least they're two different sprues because of all the weapons.
Storm Eagles, then.
Yeah, Storm Eagles. The Storm Eagles are absurdly priced. I have no idea why it's only a single sprue. The only reason I can think is that they don't want people buying Storm Eagles to convert them into Fire Raptors, which seems mean.
One of the things about Legions is, and I don't know about Epic whether they did this, but it doesn't seem to be one of those this unit buffs another unit kind of game. And I would think if you had sort of Primarchs, then it would push it towards that. And I don't know what you guys think about the direction of the gameplay, because would it take it more towards 40k where it's all characters, and that would be a very different type of game. That wouldn't be a sort of army maneuvers kind of game, which is what it is at the moment. It would turn it more into 40k. And I understand people do want to sort of play out the books and have Primarchs and things like that, but does that change the nature of the game from a war game to a more sort of character based game?
A very fine balance, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's the difficulty with adding Primarchs. I mean, one thing that I think they could do is allow the Primarchs to let you include the Legion specific units. That would give them some, function in army building without making them too crazy. I think the big problem with including Primarchs, though, is I think it's going to be very difficult to do them in a way that doesn't feel underwhelming. In a game where, a model is destroyed by a single hit, or maybe two. I mean, we've seen headquarters with 2 wounds with the Mechanicum Archmagos on the Abeyant. So it's got 2 wounds, it's got the decent invulnerable save. But it's still relatively easy to kill. Is a Primarch going to be that much more resilient, especially when you have something like a Dreadnought, which only has a 4-up save? I just fear that people are going to put a Primarch on the table, and it's going to get wiped out or it's going to get destroyed by an infantry unit shooting at it. And that's not going to feel very cinematic or in line with the books. And I don't know how you would prevent that without upending the balance of the game.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to count it as infantry, so that only light weapons can, so it wouldn't fit. It would fit more as a sort of Titan level. You need to kill it, but you can't sort of kill it with light weapons. But then you could. Yeah, it's too confusing. I can't even explain it.
I know what you mean.
Yes. It does mess with your brain trying to think how it would fit in, because they are supposed to be, super powered. But and if they're running around with a bunch of troops and all the troops are going to die, and then you've just got this one model going around, sort of one-shotting everything, then again that doesn't feel like the same game. Because if I squint my eyes, I can pretend that Legions is like a World War II game. Because it has that sort of feel. It's sort of slightly abstracted from all of the 40k space science fiction stuff. You can use tactics that would have worked in World War II, apart from the teleporting.
I think teleporting would have worked in World War II. Actually, I think.
Well, you had. Parachutes, which is kind of like a similar thing, but and I think if you push it, if you have sort of super soldiers, then it then takes away from that and just pushes it into something different. That I don't know if I'd like that.
I think what you're describing is already the case with how lots of people felt playing Space Marines against Solar in like the very first few games that we all played, where it was like, here's a base of 5 of the greatest superhumans that have ever existed, that a single one can wipe out an entire civilization if given the right command, and these guys with fire axes just wipe the floor with them because their fire axes were particularly heavy today. It was like that kind of, and I know that game balance wise, 5, even Space Marines, 5 tactical riflemen shouldn't be able to defeat melee specialists. But then to counter that, then you'd only have 2 Space Marines per base, like you have the Ogrins, and then 20 Guardsmen per base with the Solar, and it would just get a bit silly. So there is a level of abstraction, and I don't know what the answer is. I think maybe maybe the Primarch would have to be purely command, like one of those things where, if it gets into combat with anything, it'll kill them. Like, you do not want to charge this thing, but shooting it does work, even if it just incapacitates it. Maybe that's part of the rules, that if it gets shot down, it's incapacitated until it heals. But if you do decide to bring it forward into range of people, it buffs its unit more than a regular command would. I don't know. I'm sure there's a way to do it. I don't know what that way is. I mean, Epic had Demon Primarchs, and they just functioned as big monsters. But all the way back then, they didn't have the kind of legendary, status they do now. The lore was still young. It's quite relatively well known that Leman Russ originally was just a guy, and now he's one of the 18 to 20 greatest human beings that ever lived. And he started off as, he was a really good Imperial commander of the Space Marines. And I was like, okay. Oh, and by the way, the Space Marines are basically gods. Okay. And by the way, the commanders of the Space Marines were basically gods. Oh, okay. And it's kind of, as the lore has gone on, it's become a lot more rich, but a lot sillier, which I like, because there's this feeling that, the game's become more serious, but I don't think it has. I think it's become a lot sillier in the ways that matter, in terms of the lore and just how nonsense basically the Pokédex entries for the Primarchs have become. Yeah.
The other question, I guess, is if you're going to give Space Marines the Primarchs, what do you give everybody else to give them some other way of, not necessarily just here's a leader character, but here's some way of adding in new command stuff that will affect the way you play. I guess it's sort of maybe a Lord Marshal for the Solar. But does that?
But then they've got Legion-specific rules for the Legions, and no one. Well, I mean, it's just some people are complaining, but it's not the end of the world that the Legions have these rules and nobody else does.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it would be a way that actually, the Primarchs led their legions, but they also had a whole bunch of underlings as well. Like you can imagine the War Master surrounded by Chthonian headhunters. That could happen. So, but to counter that, Games Workshop don't seem to be eager to let one model be used by several different factions. For example, the Termites. They're in the first couple of editions of Horus Heresy. Those were able to be used by the Admech. They were able to be used by the Custodes. They were able to be used by the Solar, and they were able to be used by the Space Marines. But they're only able to be used by the Space Marines in this and the most recent edition of 32mm style Horus. So I don't know whether that's a deliberate thing. Counter to that, obviously, most of the Admech stuff is available to the Admech and the Dark Mech, but that seems like a special case. So if there are Primarchs, it would surprise me if they let the other factions use them. But buff-wise, again, I could imagine almost any of them. Like, for example, I could certainly imagine Perturabo walking in surrounded by Admech walkers and Dark Mech, just surrounded by his various dendrites and tentacles and other words that sound like they'll get us demonetized. It'd be interesting to see. The other things that were mentioned, we've spoken about pretty much everything, except for people just saying the weapon options were missing for things. So there are some new versions of the Tarantula they'd like to see. I don't know whether we'll get those unless they're included in those new infantry sprues that we might get for the new marks. But speaking of the new marks, with the exception of the Fell Blades, the most suggested thing is just simply 8mm Saturnine, given that we've just had the Saturnine armor stuff and Mark II stuff in Big Heresy. They reckon that they'll just do Solar Auxilia in reverse, but we'll have that now put straight into 8mm style while the CADs are all fresh. What do we think about the likelihood of that, and what do we think about whether that's the right thing to do?
I don't think they're going to do that. It's too much duplication, really, of what's already there. And a lot of the cool things about the Saturnine models is that it works when they're big, but a lot of that detail isn't going to work quite so well when it's small. Those big shoulder pads on the dreadnoughts that could look weird in 8mm. I don't know. That's just my feeling.
No, I agree with Andy. I think the models and I think the rules is for me would be the main thing. I just don't think Legions Imperialis has the granularity of rules to be able to differentiate between Saturnine Terminators and regular Terminators. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but I agree. I don't think for a variety of reasons that we'll see Saturnine Terminators or Dreadnoughts for that matter.
I'm going to go opposite to these guys. I think we need someone to fight for the Saturnine. I would love to see it.
If you weren't, I was gonna, so go for it.
I think it would be great. I mean, I don't play Astartes, but I think I would start it if they did a Saturnine box. I think they are. It would be hard to find a place for them in the rules, but I think they managed to do that in Horus Heresy, which I kind of thought was never going to happen. So I don't see why they couldn't find some new ways. They've sort of introduced new weapon types and things that I think would be interesting to see in Legions as well. I was reading, there was like a Warhammer community article about how they went down the process of working out what the different weapons would be and how they would be different to what other things already had in the game. And I feel like that same philosophy could apply in 8mm scale as well. But who knows? Is it likely? Maybe not, but I'd like to see it.
I think in terms of the granularity, I think the different armor marks helps in terms of the scale. For example, we know that there's going to be other, or at least we know that they've written in the rules the option for there to be infantry with different weapon types than we currently have. And I also know that it's really hard at a distance, if you haven't painted them significantly differently, to tell the difference between a bolter and a plasma on the table. You can tell the missiles a bit differently because they're on the head, but it's not easy to tell the different weapons apart unless you give the plasma a glow or anything else to make it a bit simpler. If you have different armor marks, then it would be a lot easier to tell the difference on the table. And I think that would help, rather than they don't need to have different stat blocks. They just need to look different and have different weapons. And I think that will help. So even if they just like the different marks of armor do, if they come up on, I think showing the different marks of armor as having different weapon options with the same stat block, like Horus Heresy used to be, I think that would help out a lot. So we have Cataphracti. I think if we had Saturnine Terminators with a different weapon loadout, and then Tartarus Terminators with an even differenter weapon loadout, I think if the different marks indicate the different weapon loadouts, that would be a really nice way of incorporating the different marks without worrying too much about the granularity of the rules. Because obviously at this scale, the difference in the attack power or defensive capabilities of a Saturnine is unlikely to be much different from the others. So I think it'd be nice. The more variety, the better. As much as I love 1,000 identical models coming towards you on the table, it's very terrifying. Variety is also good. For example, I play Tyranids at 28mm, so I like a whole bunch of Gribblies, but I use 2nd edition models next to 3rd edition models next to the most recent models when it comes to Gaunts. So, that looks good too. Having a mix of all these different models that look different but have the same rules. So I appreciate that. And that's everything that my very professional looking list suggested.
Well,
is there anything you think we've missed? Yes, Andy.
Yes. Plastic armigers.
Yes, I feel like they are a requirement at this point.
Not that anyone knows how to play them, or what they're really for. I think, but they will definitely help with the new Collegia formations that we got with the Dark Mech book, because they feature quite heavily in that. There's some that you can't do without armigers, so that will open up that side of the game, and it might be that they add something. I've got no idea what, but they add something that makes Titans and Knights a little bit more usable in the game. Whether that could be new scenarios, missions, or some new rules, and they could lean into that and have the armigers as well as an extra thing to sort of sweeten that deal to make people push more in that direction.
It's remarkable that even with my single person crusade to ensure all the nonsense I build is playable at Warhammer World, in spite of that, I still have found myself making little press screen stuff molds of the chainsaw and smaller gun arm for the armigers, so that I could have the good loadout of armigers rather than the double autocannon version, because the resin ones come automatically mixed. I'd like to think that when they do them in plastic, you'd have the option for both. But yeah, no, we do need plastic armigers, and we do need more flexibility with the weapon loadouts.
Molak Oh, sorry, Andy, go on.
I was going to say, does anyone know anyone who has got or is playing armigers?
I've got them, haven't played them yet.
Right. So I mean, that's definitely, and that's got to be because they're resin. only, really. Otherwise, I think people would take more of a punt on them and try them out and just have a couple and just see how they go. But
I've only got them because I found someone who I assume was just quitting Adeptus or something, or offloading some of their Grey Tide. There were a whole bunch of old resin Adeptus Titanicus stuff that was being sold on eBay, and proper. It wasn't like recast or anything. It was clearly just someone selling off their collection, because anything that could have a box did have a box. So I was lucky that I found this stuff slightly less than RRP kind of going, and I was able to grab a couple of boxes. But I certainly wouldn't have paid full price for them.
No, I think that's the same. So with everyone is just that there's not an obvious use case for them. So why would you spend a load of money on such a risk?
And in resin, they are not just expensive, like a risk financially if you don't end up using them, but they're also a risk because they don't come with any spare pieces and they snap incredibly easily, especially I assume, the kind of like balancing apparatus on the back of the shins. They all have these little kind of V-shaped one, and of my 6, 2 of them have got both snapped on the legs. So and I'm quite, I think I'm quite delicate and look after my models, apart from when I'm chucking them in a box to take to battle. But I built them quite carefully, and they still snapped. So
in terms of the whole thing, that what the clues that GW have given us, without any sort of wish listing at all. So we've got artillery for Space Marines, light armor for solar, plastic armigers, and the other little things. Is it Moirax, or have we had the Moirax already? There's the other thing that go with the armigers.
they're a different kind of armature, aren't they? They're the Mechanicum style armature.
Oh, okay, yeah. So those are things that we know. Oh, and the Sakaran Venator as well, that we've had the picture of, but no hints in the text. So there are gaps. I mean, I don't think we're going to get them all in this next run. I think we're going to get the Fellblade and variants, because that's a lot more fun. But I think we might get a couple of the others as well, and a campaign book.
Yeah, if I were to bet, I'd bet on the Fellblades. I think that's the only one I'd probably put money behind, which means it's almost guaranteed not to happen. But yeah, I think that's the safest bet. I agree with you there. So, campaign-wise, where do you think we're going next in terms of the campaign? We've been to Talon, Beta Carmen, yeah.
Well, the rumors are Molech, aren't they?
Molech, yes.
I think it makes the most sense that we'll see Istvan. I mean, that's going to tie in with the 32, the 28 millimeter Horus Heresy release. If we're going to get a campaign book, I think that would be where I would put money on.
So the Dropside Massacre.
Exactly, yeah, because that seems to have been their modus operandi up to this point. Both the Great Slaughter and the Martian book lined up for Horus Heresy and Legions Imperialis, where we got the both books were covering the same campaign material. So that would be my bet.
What's the first sort of location where they would have had demons attacking? Because those were all sort of early war kind of things. What about the more later war stuff?
Moloch, I think, does have demons. So that is why maybe that could be a good option. I remember looking it up when I first saw that rumor and seeing that it focused quite heavily on the presence of demons.
That so could just be wish listing. So yeah, I don't really know the campaigns that much to be able to talk intelligently about that, but yeah, I mean, if they did do Molech, then that could be a way of getting into demons. I mean, the thing is, they threw us a curveball with all the Mechanicum stuff that came out of nowhere. And was anyone rumoring that before it happened? I don't remember it, but maybe you guys heard of it.
Not that I saw.
Not
No,
before the release, I don't think. No.
the last thing we heard was them saying, "Oh, don't expect there to be any more factions anytime soon. Do what you can with Space Marines and Solar." And then, like the next day, that leaked potato camera image of the battle group was released, and that was for all of us. I remember seeing that, and it was like, if that's a Photoshop, there's a very niche Photoshop. That's like, I know everyone kind of assumed it was just true immediately, and I did think it was true, because why would anyone fake it? But at the same time, it was like they just said we weren't getting anything. So I don't know whether that did just force their hand to release it early, but at the same time, it was ready, and
I don't
ready
think
enough.
they can, as a big company like that. I don't think they can turn on a sixpence and release things that quickly. That would be so disruptive to everything, because they have such a constant release schedule that if you swap things around, I mean, after having the delay on the initial starter box and that pushing Great Slaughter right into the middle of the old world, and that didn't do Legions any favors, I don't think, and that they would not want to be in a situation where they're swapping things around again for that. But yeah, I mean, I think demons are a nice idea, but I don't think that's going to happen this year.
I'd obviously love to see them, and I'd also love to make a Samus out of a bloodletter, like a 28mm scale bloodletter. I think with a little bit of posing, you could do the kind of really stupid Samus pose. There are lots of things I really love about Forge World and Classic Forge World. Their posing on their monsters is not necessarily one of them. There are some very awkward poses. I think that with Forge World, the fatter a monster is, the better posed it looks. And the skinnier a monster is, the more you look at it and go, how the hell is that standing up?
The new Fulgrim is pretty nice, though.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I've got one, and it's on my desk, and it was one of those things I said, right, I'm going to paint this, I'm going to get it through, it's all going to be completely done before I start anything else. And then the next week, Legions was announced to actually be coming out, and that completely threw a spanner in that. But I've done a really crazy conversion of it, fighting like the classic Fulgrim fighting modern Gilliman, with kind of a caption rematch in my head of this kind of fight happening. So at some point, it's going to be painted. If I can be bothered to edit some of the work in progress shots over this video, I will. But it is very much in progress, and that progress hasn't changed in over a year. So, yeah. Work in progress, yes. So we've talked very logically about this, about what we think would happen and what we think they've got coming up. If you could wave a magic wand, what is your absolute, like, no limits, just if you could decide what Games Workshop were going to be doing, what would you be doing? What would you desperately want?
So, yeah, I would like to see some sort of air power for Mechanicum, even if it's just sort of repurposed things based on the solar things, but just with a Mechanicum twist. Because I think that's a real problem with Mechanicum armies, is that they are completely bereft of air power, and I've had to play a lot of games against Mechanicum people where I've had to say, okay, I'm not bringing any air power because it's just a bit unfair. So they can sort of live on their own as their own faction, just for a bit. I'd also like to see more big tanks. and more scenery. I really like the scenery, and so it's not adding that much to the game. It's really just sort of fleshing it out a little bit, but it's just going to make it more cinematic and maybe some more tiles. Actually, I don't know whether that was just an aberration of them bringing out the elevated plaza, but I thought that was lovely. And that with some of the heavy military style terrain, I think would get people thinking, differently. Even though, I mean, people have done so many really nice board layouts. They've really sort of leaned into it and done so much spectacular stuff. I think they could do more. I think we could, if we give them bigger buildings to make, then they'll be able to do that as well. And then because it's official, people will be using those rules more for the really big fortification buildings, the stuff that you just can't shoot without a bunker buster. And then if they could tie that in, if Games Workshop could tie that in with more weapon options to be able to deal with those, and maybe troops that are carrying little explosive charges and stuff like that can run up to a wall and blow a big hole in it. All of that stuff all ties in nicely together and will just make for a more cinematic game. We'll still be getting a load of new stuff, but it's also filling in the gaps that that we've got at the moment because everyone's concentrating on Civitas stuff. That's my wish list.
Yeah, I'm just going to copy Andy's wish list then. I think all of that.
Boo, you suck, Josh. Boo.
I mean, the thing that I latched onto immediately was the more big tanks. I think, like, because of the scale of the game, it's the most feasible game in the Warhammer world to have like massive, ridiculous, really Warhammer vehicles, like your mastodons and other things that are just obscenely big, and you could never take that to a 40k game. Like the Baneblades are great. You'd never have 8 Baneblades in an army at any other scale, but you can at this scale. So I think stuff that doubles down on that, more big vehicles, would be really good.
Ordinatus, remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the Ordinatus. Yeah,
that would be so cool. I mean, I was going to try and encourage Matty to lip bash one out of 2 Baneblades. That might be pushing my luck a bit
Could
much.
That be done? It must be possible.
It could.
Leave it with me. Again, if you want it released, I'll lip bash it and then it'll be released as soon as I bother to edit the video.
And then I think on from big tanks, it would be terrain that has more interactability, like placeable trenches that give infantry bonuses, but vehicles have to go over or around. Would be quite interesting, or weapon embankments or void shields, just things that you could put down across a map to give you more sort of specific strategic advantages for going certain ways, more things to fight over that aren't just an abstract objective. Would be quite interesting. Yeah, I'm not that interested in seeing Primarchs. I think I've gone full circle on it. At the beginning of the video, I was like, you know what, yeah, I'd like to see that, but now I'm like, I don't know if it would fit with the game's sort of design ethos that well.
What I would like is confirmation, because as a kit basher, Primarchs are a big thing, literally, because it's not like I can use a regular scale Space Marine for it, because that'd be way too big, but I also can't use Legions scale Space Marine for it, because it'd be way too small. So I'd have to find bits. The best thing I've found so far is that there are a couple of banner tops, like kind of the standard bearers for Space Marines, particularly Blood Angels, have different angels on the top of their banners and standards, and I reckon we wouldn't have much movement, but in terms of size and scale, one of those Blood Angels with the halo and holding the sword with the teardrop and the wings would be the right size for Sanguinius, but it would be standing there like this rather than that kind of beautiful kind of stabby pose. So yeah, I'm sure it could be done, but I'd need to seriously invest some time into looking at the different bits, finding those mini reliefs and statues, this kind of stuff that are just that scale in between 8mm and 28mm, to try and find something that would be right for most of the Primarchs, which I will happily do, but I don't want to start doing that if then we do just get a box of way better plastic Primarchs. If they hadn't done that little stupid question in the FAQ when they first announced it, saying, "Oh, we're going to see tiny Primarchs. Ooh, wouldn't that be a thing?" or whatever they said. If they hadn't said that, I'd have done it by now. But because they said that, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, well,
Because
that was
I made a
the-
demon Fulgrim, and I just finished painting it, and then they announced it, and it was so pretty.
I think that was just a community person just being funny.
Yeah,
You never
they're
know.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it will be funny though.
it would be.
Either way.
Yeah. How about you, Charlie? What's top of your wish list? If you could, not just in terms of what's realistic, but if you could
Yeah.
choose where this game goes next, what would you do?
I think the biggest thing for me would be something that makes the Astartes legions play more differently from each other. For me, I think they're just they do have the legion rules, but I don't think those do enough to really differentiate them. I'd like to see something that gives them, something that makes them play more like how we imagine them from what we see in the books and the fiction. I don't necessarily know what that would be, whether it's special units, something, I know we just talked about Primarchs, whether the Primarchs would provide that maybe. So that's a bit of a vague answer, but I think that would be my top choice.
What do you think of the formations of legend? I know we haven't had many so far, but do you think they help at all, or do you think they're just too big and expensive to be effective?
I think it's a combination of them being far too expensive to put together. I mean, the one that comes to mind for me is the Mechanicum one that requires like 40 bases of the Myrmidon Secutors, which, I mean, nobody's going to do that with miniatures they have purchased from Games Workshop. But as far as the formations of Legend go in general, I don't see them used that much. I don't personally think that they really, maybe there's just not enough of them yet, but I just don't see them having a huge effect on how the game is played. And I don't think that even when they do have an effect, that effect really aligns with how I picture the legions performing on the battlefield.
I wonder if almost for the sake of getting people to play legions how they are supposed to be played, if having formations of legend, but instead of costing more for special rules, you get things at a bonus, so that for example, if you take a white scars formation of legend, all the flyers and javelins are just 5 points cheaper. So rather than 30 points per pair of javelins, it's 25, and so that saves you like points elsewhere. Whether that would just gently encourage units to take those, whether and the same for tanks and the iron hands, those little things that we know they should do. And I know they always justify this by saying, throughout the heresy, the legions were still finding their identities, and there was still, it wasn't the kind of codex, so to speak, but there was the legion structure that they all followed. And then as the years went on, they started to find their specialism, and they started to kind of fit that niche. But yeah, there does need to be something to encourage it beyond just you like a certain color scheme and you like the fluff. Like I know it's a narrative game, but you're always going to have power gamers, and that's fine. For example, Alpha Legion, because yes, they're very sneaky, so you're going to want lots of sneaky people. But does that apply to all legions? You'd have to really like Thousand Suns to play Thousand Suns. Like you'd have to really like them to.
Yeah, they basically have no Legion rule, right? I don't think I've ever seen it come into play in
No.
all the games that I've played.
Yeah.
So
I feel like the Thousand Suns Legion rule and probably the Raven Guard Legion rule, if you play 100 games using them, that special rule is going to win you one game and it'll be glorious and it'll never come up in the other 99.
But I do like your the sort of discounts for certain legions. I think that's a really elegant idea. And then you could have sort of tweaks to formations so that you might be able to have one extra core choice in or aircraft in the formation if you have a specific legion. But just tiny little tweaks like that, so you feel like you're getting something and that you can use all the time. That is kind of thematic. So yeah, that's a nice idea.
That's a good idea too. Like for example, the Legion rules for Emperor's Children could be you may choose to wherever there is a heavy armor slot, you may instead choose to take a Vanguard or light armor slot instead. So that gives you the choice. If you're like, oh, I've got lots more javelins than I ever need because there's only a couple of formations that use that much Vanguard. Or if I could focus in on Emperor's Children or White Scars, then I can use them in place of the big tanks, and I don't really like the big tanks. Yeah, that's a good shout too. If there is that slight bespokeness to army building, I wonder if I think it's obviously way too early to be thinking about a second edition of the game, especially because we've only just had that quite sizable FAQ and erratum. But it's interesting that with this version of Horus Heresy, they're changing the Force Org for the first time in a while. And they do this shortly after completely removing the Force Org from 40k. And I really like the Force Org. One of the reasons I like army building in Legions is that it's basically a Force Org. I know it's not the same categories, but you need this many of this one, you need this many of this one, you need this many of this one. If you have that one, you have a choice of these two. Like I think that's fun, and I know presumably their focus groups say that people don't like granular points and building to schematics, but I do. That was always part of the fun, to see what I could fit into quite a strict like organization chart. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they're doing with that, especially in light of the other games, even Horus Heresy, which has always been kind of the old style. Like even when 40k was changing, Horus Heresy were like, no, we're still going to keep this. Even that's still got a Force Org, but it's significantly changed. Whether that'll have any impact on Legions going forward.
Well, as of recording, I think the changes they've made to Horus Heresy 3 are not universally loved at the moment.
I have no doubt. Yeah, I got before Legions, my main game and the game I'd played the most of was Warhammer Fantasy. Like I could probably count the number of 40k games I played on all my fingers and toes. Even though I've got stupid numbers of Tyranids, I'm a painter and a collector before I'm a player. But fantasy, I loved. And that was, in the days of this percentage of core, this percentage of heroes, this percentage of laws, this percentage of rare special. And I thought that was great. And I enjoyed making Excel spreadsheets. And if I put this many more points into this, how many more points did I get of that? And all of that. But that's the kind of gamer I was and the kind of army builder I was. And I remember when Age of Sigmar came in, and it came in with no points, and it came in with, bring whatever you've got to fight each other, and you get extra points if you have a bigger moustache. That's how we'll balance the game. And I'm not exaggerating about that. I don't know if you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, those of you two are shaking your heads. There was literally a rule that was you got to go first if you had a bigger moustache, and it was really silly. The first edition Age of Sigmar.
That was kind of
do-
tongue in cheek, though.
oh, absolutely, and I have a little
At the
bit of a fond
time.
memory for it. But considering how, you know, it was Warhammer was the OG game. Like we all call it Warhammer Fantasy, but it was just Warhammer officially. Like Warhammer brackets the game of fantasy battles. You know, so going from the Warhammer, the game, the one that started it all, to here's a game where you get extra points if you shout really loud at your miniatures while you're playing. It did feel a little bit like kicking the teeth, and I think they've absolutely turned around on it, and they've absolutely fixed it. And the Age of Sigmar system is excellent. It's a very, very good skirmish game system. That I've played far more games than I have of 40k. Still not as many as I did Warhammer Fantasy, but I had a lot more of time with Warhammer Fantasy. Interestingly, I still haven't played the Old World. I think that's just because Legions has kind of got my whole brain at the moment, any of that I've got left. But I do want to give that another go at some point. I've got all my old armies still. I'm not one of those people who went out and burned their Dark Elves. The only thing that is annoying is that I rebased my, because again, when Age of Sigmar started, bases didn't matter. You measured model to model, which meant theoretically big models. You have little models walking on a big model's base to get to the model. It was very silly. I rebased my clan rats on 20mm circles so I could still use them out on a movement tray for Warhammer. And then when they have brought Warhammer back, they've just moved clan rats up to 25s. So it's like, well, I should just put them on. I bought special 20mm bases from some base company so I could do this, and now I needn't to bother. So that was annoying, but still not worth burning my clan rats for. So rip to anyone who did that. Do you think we'll ever get a edition 2? Like how many years down the line? Do you think this is a game that will get a second edition, or do you think it'll just get updates and campaigns and errata?
I think it will, in terms of a consolidation, to make it sort of fewer books. So because now now we've got a lot of factions. There's enough to sort of split off 4 separate army books. So I think if there is another edition of it, it will be sort of out of the box with all the armies there, which will be better for people getting into the game. But I think a lot of the rules still could be clarified. I don't think it will be a edition change in the same way that we've had recently with 40k and Horus Heresy. I think it'll be a refinement of it, so almost like a 1.5, but by splitting it into army books, it will feel like a new version. But in terms of the gameplay, I mean, I think the gameplay, with very few exceptions, is pretty much there. There's nothing that that needs to be sort of thrown out and fixed. It's just a few little tweaks here and there. So they could package that as Legions 2, but it wouldn't actually need to be that much different.
A bit like the last time they updated Lord of the Rings. Like this time they've done a bit of a, for War of the Rohirrim, they did a bit more of a proper new edition. But I remember the last time they did that, they just put everything into new army books. Gathered the good together, gathered the evil together. Told you.
I've subconsciously stolen that idea. I think that's what I was thinking about when I suggested that. But yeah, I think that would be ideal. And I think the Legions players are sort of more like Middle Earth players than 40k players, to be honest, because we're a bit more less power gamery and more narrative-y kind of thing.
You say less power gamey after all the Middle Earth game tournaments recently have just been how many eagles can I fit into a list?
Notwithstanding that, but if you forget the latest edition, but previously, yeah.
Because with Middle Earth tournaments, typically if you're doing a classic one, you have to bring along a good army and an evil army, so that you never have two goods and two evils against each other. And it seems to be the most recent tournaments have been, oh, bring an evil army of your choice. There's lots of them. They're all lovely. Pick whichever one you like, and also 5 eagles.
Yeah, well, hopefully we won't have that.
Yeah.
Although the five Thunderhawk game might be interesting.
I was thinking the closest thing we've got to that is just maxing out missile tactical upgrades and rhinos, and just that's it. It would be incredibly boring to play, but it's hard to imagine how an army, even one specifically designed to be anti-infantry, could beat just maxed out missiles in rhinos marching forward.
More template weapons, and maybe that would be coming with artillery.
That's a good
great.
shout.
I wonder if rather than a second edition of Legion, we'd be more likely to get a new version of Epic 40k, and if they'd sort of use what they've learnt from Legions to then roll into a larger scale game. It feels like that would be, at least from a Warhammer point of view, for them releasing things and selling more things, it would seem like a smart move to be like, we've built a dedicated community who like this game, and we've got lots of people who like 40k. We've sort of learned all of our lessons, or tried to learn as many of our lessons as we can from Legions, and turn that into a new Epic 40k.
I would disagree with that vehemently, purely from the fact that I think that would eat into 40k sales, because you would have two different scales of playing 40k, and I mean it's bad enough now. I mean, how many times you walked into a Games Workshop store and picked up a Horus Heresy or Legions Imperialis box when you meant to pick up the other one of it, the bigger or smaller scale? Because I certainly have.
That might be your eyesight, Andy.
Yeah, maybe, I think. But the whole idea. I mean, certainly when we've looked at Warhammer Community and things like that, and we've seen an article on something Horus Heresy, we go, "Oh, brilliant! That's coming to Legions." It's, oh, wait, no, it's the big one.
Particularly Titans. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be too dangerous for them to have a tiny scale of their flagship game. I think they can risk it with Horus Heresy and Legions. They can just about get away with that because the Horus Heresy people tend to be a little bit more au fait with the range. They're a little bit older in general as well, and they're not asking their grand to buy them stuff. And can you imagine how many people are going to get teeny tiny Legions 40k stuff instead of the 28k stuff for Christmas, because their grannies are like me and can't see what's on the shelves? Yeah, I just
was about to say, what have you been buying your grandkids? Yeah.
Sorry?
I was about to say, what have you been buying your grandkids?
Horus Heresy.
But yeah, that's why I don't think that's going to be a thing, unless Epic Warpath does massively well, which I don't think it's going to. I vote no for that one.
I was just going to say it would be interesting to see if Legions Imperialis sales had any impact on Horus Heresy. Like, I know it is a very different market, but I'd be very curious to see what that did to. I wonder if it had any impact at all. Does anyone know?
I don't know, but based on the hostility that Legions Imperialis gets from many Horus Heresy players, at least that I see online, I would have to hazard a guess that it's not had a huge effect. But I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I doubt it's had a big effect. I think Legions is probably bringing more people into the hobby than it's sort of cannibalizing from the other Games Workshop games, because when you see
feel more like a supplementary game, like a supplementary hobby. I know we're all obsessed with it, but for most people, it's kind of like, oh, I do this army. Oh, and I've also got a little bit of legions. In the same way that people used to when it was just like the big two, it would be, like, oh, I mainly do 40k, but I've got a small vampire counts force, or oh, I mainly do Warhammer, but I've got a couple of orcs from a starter set. And I feel now it's, at least in my experience, it's kind of like, oh yeah, well, I do orcs, and I do dark elves, and oh, I do Skaven, and I've got quite a few Urukai, oh, and several Blood Bowl teams. Oh yeah, and I've got this Legions Imperialis starter set that I should get around to painting. In that way, that hyperfixation is dangerous.
But that's the thing about Legions. It's just just one more tank, one more wafer thin tank. It's just so easy just to build up your force like that. It's no real pressure, and then you suddenly look and you've got a whole box full of really interesting units that you can play some really interesting games with, and you didn't really notice that you did it.
The most dangerous thing about that, in terms of my own pile of potential / shame, depending on how you want to look at it, is, at least when it started, I know there's been a slight price increase overall since, but when it started, every single box was £30, and it was like, regardless, so whatever I fancied in the mood for, if I had £30 to spend from that month's paycheck, it's like, oh, I can buy a box because I know how much it's going to be. It's going to be £30. I know some of the Titans were a little bit more or less, but £30, I can either get 2 sprues of infantry, 2 sprues of tanks, 2 sprues of flyers, or 1 sprue of storm eagles. It was nice. It was almost like, here's a token for it. Here's a token for 1 box of your finest Legions Imperialis, and you went in and took it out. So yeah, that was dangerous, and I see that continuing if they keep that model of consistency. Is there anything that you really don't want? Is there anything that would be actively disappointing? Because I know we're all assuming it's going to be the super heavy tanks, but really that's only going to be 1 or 2 kits, which wouldn't be great. But we're all thinking, actually, that'd be quite good. It's been a while, whether we're just starved and looking for any kind of morsels of legions. But is there anything that, if they released it, especially after putting Legions Imperialis on that list of games that are going to be featured, is there anything we'd look at and go,
If they said we're going to bring out Legions 2 and it's going to be streamlined and we're getting rid of melee or whatever, or something stupid, that would ruin my day. I think that would be the worst thing they could do.
That's funny, Andy, because I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, a second edition of Legions Imperialis would be a disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, especially after the Horus Heresy thing, which was it 2 years or 3 years since the Horus Heresy 2?
It's not been long. It's not been long.
Yeah, and forcing everyone to rebuy everything, and in a kind of arbitrary way. I think that because that's in the back of my head at the moment, that would be my biggest worry. But you see, I've always got this fantasy that everything they've done for Legions has been a reaction to Epic Warpath. And that a lot of the problems that they had to begin with was they rushed Legions out to beat Epic Warpath to the punch. And maybe that's just my conspiracy theory mind going. I mean, it makes for a wonderful narrative and explains a lot of things. But, until Epic Warpath actually comes out and either sinks or swims, I'm just thinking, maybe GW is sort of, changing tack and moving things around just to rain on Warpath's parade, because it'd be a really fun story to gossip about. But probably nothing is related to that at all. But yeah, no to Legions 2 until 5 years, please.
The thing I find interesting about Legion's kind of status amongst Warhammer, like as a range, is that it is Warhammer. Like even Horus Heresy wasn't Warhammer until very recently. It was just the Horus Heresy, and now it's Warhammer, the Horus Heresy. In the same way, it's Warhammer Age of Sigmar, Warhammer the Old World, Warhammer 40,000. For example, Blood Bowl isn't Warhammer; it's just Blood Bowl. It seems weird to imagine Warhammer Blood Bowl. That doesn't quite match. I think Kill Team is Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team, so that's kind of like a sub game. And Warcry, I think, was Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry. Legions Imperialis is Warhammer, the Horus Heresy, Legions Imperialis. It's kind of like 2 steps down, which is interesting. And I don't know whether that gives it kind of more weight or less weight than something like Blood Bowl, but the fact it does actually have the trademark on it, it is Warhammer. Would it be better if it was just Horus Heresy and Legions Imperialis? I don't know. Would it be better if it was just Warhammer Legions Imperialis? I don't know.
I think they were trying to capture the Horus Heresy market of those fans who wanted to play bigger battles. I think that's what they wanted at the start. But I think it's spread beyond that. I think it's hit more a wider demographic than they thought it was going to be honest.
I wish I knew how it was selling. I have no insider knowledge as to how it's selling. I don't know whether it's sold more than expected, less than expected, exactly what they predicted. I have no idea.
No information in the bins at Warhammer World. There was no information at all that they threw out. They must have shredded it all because I was going through them for hours.
So I did talk to somebody. I went to the Tacoma Open last summer to play in the Legions Imperialis event, and I did talk to the rep there. And obviously that was almost a year ago now. But he did say that it had sold very well and that it was planned to be supported for years to come. Now, obviously, he's a Games Workshop rep, so I'm not sure if he would say anything other than that, even if it wasn't selling well. So I guess take that with a grain of salt. But that's the information that I have from, I think, an official Games Workshop employee about Legions Imperialis.
Was he pressing a box of tanks into your hands as he said it?
Yeah, no, it was not. no, he nothing like that. No.
I think there's still a lot of buzz about it, which is a very good sign. People are still talking, and you see on Reddit and Facebook, people are still coming into the game fresh, and that's really good for a system that's been out for 18 months already. And you see a lot of other systems, and all the buzz dies down after a year, but people still coming into it now and getting into it in a big way as well. It's really encouraging.
And personally, like all of us here, I know not you, Andy, because you haven't done any Legions yet. Maybe what I'm about to say will encourage you actually to put some Legion stuff up amongst your old man trains. But like our channels are growing still. Like there was that initial kind of like boom, and then it plateaued a bit, but it's still going, and that's with people unsubscribing as well. Like it's every day you lose a couple, you gain a couple, but it's going up. And even when it's been, because again, as established, I teach and it's the summer term and marking is crazy and there's an awful lot going on. It's been longer between my videos than usual, but subs are still going up even without new content, which is fascinating and not what I was expecting. And again, when I keep an eye on you guys' numbers as well, again, it's going up, and hopefully will continue for a good time to come because it's nice endorphins. People want to see me make silly models. That's nice. Which is good. And also it means if ever I make any of that sweet YouTube ad money, I can put it towards the mortgage. And if ever my family say, can you move that from the kitchen table? I'll go, well, you want me to move my work from the kitchen table? That's bringing in money. And that was your Chinese takeaway the other night. Yeah. I'm trying to now find out whether YouTube has actually purchased me a Chinese takeaway ever. Probably just about. Yeah.
I mean, the game is incredibly compelling to look at, and I think that's one of its biggest strengths, and I think that's why people are drawn to it. You know, anytime that my friends or I play at a game store, it always draws people in, which is almost counterintuitive because the models are so tiny, right? It's almost like, why would you want to look at it? But it's the composite image of the infantry and the tanks and the Titans and the terrain, like we talked about earlier. It's just something about it is very compelling and captures people's imagination. And I think if we can, highlight that, I think, the game will, a games workshop can continue to highlight that. I think the game will continue to grow.
I've never seen a bad looking army. I've seen bad looking individual models. I've painted bad looking individual models, but I've never seen a bad looking army.
I mean, the mood at Warhammer World at the last event was very much, this is gonna keep on going, and it didn't say anything specific, but it was just you got the feeling that this is here to stay, and yeah, the people playing there were so into it, in the best way. They weren't chasing the latest cool game. It was like, yeah, we're going to be playing this for years, and I from the way that they sort of set up the all of the battles, it just felt like it was here to stay. So I'm very happy with what I took away from that event.
When I went to Warhammer World, it was the same weekend as a Warhammer Underworlds tournament, which again is Warhammer Underworlds, not just Underworlds. And that game surprises me that it's had the legs it's had. Like, I suppose the thing that Warhammer Underworlds has is that all the teams are kind of prefab, and you buy a box of it and then you've got the team to play. But yeah, considering what happens to an awful lot of the side games that kind of come in and then go, it amazes me that Underworlds has the legs it has. I'm very glad it has. Very pleased for all of you Underworlds fans watching. I've not gone into it. I've got an awful lot of models because I like pretty models, but I haven't actually played a game. And even then, there were a lot more people for the Underworlds because you can fit a lot more games of Underworlds into the same number of tables because you only need that much space to play it, which is another reason why it's probably doing quite well. But all the Underworlds players at some point came over to look at the amazing armies at the Legions tables, and no one went over to look at the Underworlds. And I don't think that's any slight on the effort and the paint jobs of the Underworlds models. They're gorgeous and they all are, but because they're very much set, like, this is what your team looks like. If you know what the Stormcast Underworlds team looks like, then you know what it looks like. Yeah, people might have put in particularly good effort. People might have used fancy paint schemes of their own devising, but they know what the team looks like. But every single army at the Legions tables was completely different in terms of how it was painted, the Legions used, the armies used, how many Titans, how many Knights. And even the kind of like most power gamey lists were painted to extreme levels. Like, it kind of made you feel you couldn't hate them. It's like, yeah, you've got an awful lot of rhinos, an awful lot of missile launchers, but you've printed out tiny decals for every single shoulder pad. I'm very happy to lose to you. It's that kind of feeling, which is nice. Narrative games are good. Let's all be narrative, and that's
I mean, I had the same thing at this Warhammer World event, and even though there wasn't an Underworlds event going on at the same time, everybody from the other tables was coming over and having a look, and some of them were standing around and watching us play, because it did look very impressive, and they, maybe they hadn't seen it before, played quite so much, because there's only one dedicated Legions table that I saw at Warhammer World. It's amazing, but there's not many of them. But yeah, it does look very good, and it does pique people's curiosity.
So we think the future of the game is in good hands then.
Yes.
Yes.
For now.
Yes, and we should all do our part to spread the word to the random people who this has cropped up on their various For You pages and feeds and other nonsense.
Yeah. If they got this far into the video, then I think they're hooked.
Well,
You don't know how I'm going to edit it. I might put this at the beginning,
This
and
is-
then it won't make any sense.
You're not Christopher Nolan.
You're not the boss of me. I could be Christopher Nolan. I'm not Christopher Nolan. If I were Christopher Nolan, I probably wouldn't have a YouTube channel. Given the fact that Christopher Nolan doesn't have a YouTube channel. Although, what did I see the other day? It was the screenwriter for Challengers, the guy who wrote the script for Challengers, Oscar-nominated screenwriter, had a YouTube channel like at the beginning of YouTube of him just with a face kind of warp filter on, where if you put your face far away, it made your face small, and put it close, it made it big. And he was just doing this kind of duologue with himself about buying the strongest potions, and it was so stupid and so funny and incredibly kind of like early 2000s YouTube poop. But this guy now is an Oscar nominee, so
Well, we'll reconvene in 20 years'
any one of
time.
us here making stupid limp dick jokes could go on to win an Oscar. And if that's not immoral, I don't know what is.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe and help get us an Oscar. Cool. And on that note, we should probably start wrapping this up. As I'm aware, it's getting dark.
It is
I've noticed
getting dark.
how dark my face has become in the picture.
I just seem to keep
Really
getting
Friday the
lighter
18th.
for some reason.
It's probably because your lighting is being replaced from the natural to the artificial, whereas I haven't got artificial on me because I'm in the brightest room with the whitest walls. So I figured I'd just use the ambiance, and that's obviously lacking in the aunts at the moment. Thank you, you lovely limperdicks. And if I didn't include any of that at the beginning, then I should probably say thank you to you in general. Otherwise, everyone will be wondering why I'm calling you all limp dicks. Or again, I might keep it in anyway, and everyone will be really confused. If you want to know why we're calling each other limp dicks, put it in the comments. Drive engagement. We're basically whores. Well done, everyone. Thank you for this conversation. Anything anyone would like to add or plug? Obviously, your various channels will be dotted around here. Everyone, give yourself a shout out and tell me and the audience exactly who you are, what you do, and why we should all subscribe to you.
My channel, Model Paint Whatever, is basically anything to do with models and tiny things. So it covers model trains, and I've been going to a lot of game shows and filming around those, so that people can see what those shows are like. And I am going to be doing some Legions content and possibly content on other games, but Legions is my my current love. So expect some of those videos to be coming out in due course.
It's also important, I'd like to point out, that what you need is subscribers, because in terms of hours watched and views, you are light years. That's not the right unit of measurement, but you're way ahead of any of us, because your salute video
ahead of anyone else.
Yeah, you've got. If ever you've seen a random "This is a tour of Salute this year" video come up and you've watched it, it was probably Andy. So let's all be very grateful to him and subscribe so he can actually make some money out of it. Because at the moment, YouTube is abusing him.
No, I'm monetized now.
You're monetized now.
Hey.
Oh, excellent!
Yeah, I got the subscribers.
Nice. When was that? In which case, don't subscribe to him. Ignore that.
Yeah, unsubscribe.
Cool. I don't suppose they're going to back pay you for any of the nonsense views.
No, they do not do that. That's why you've got to go for the subscribers as soon as possible. As soon as you're approaching the watch hours, you need to push hard on subscribers, so that you stop YouTube taking the money that is yours by right.
By the power. Josh, who are you?
I am Josh from Hobbius Novitiate, with my co-host over there, Matt, normally. We are focused on getting complete beginners into Legions Imperialis. So it's all about like how you get started, some painting videos, some sort of beginner-friendly strategy videos. Everything's quite low-key. So if you don't know what we've been talking about for the last 2 hours, go have a look over there and you might find out some background information.
And you were the famously painted an entire starter box in
48 hours to build and paint. I've done the starter box and the solo battle group, both in 48 hours. And then next time, we're going to be doing the Titans, the War Masters. So that's going to be horrible.
I think I'll happily join in on
Yes.
you, and I'll try painting my. So I've got a War Master Iconoclast sitting on my table, unpainted, that needs a lick.
There you go.
Yeah, and Charlie, our friend from across the pond.
Yes, hi. So yeah, I'm Charlie. I run the Tacticae Imperialis channel on YouTube. I do battle reports for Legions Imperialis, and if you like analytic videos about unit tactics and strategies and army analysis, I hope you'll come check it out.
They're very good. I've built many an army while listening to Charlie's voice, Charlie's dulcet tones over my headphones. And I'd love to say it's helped me win with Mechanicum. I don't think anything could. I'm not very good at playing Mechanicum. But if anything was going to help me, it would be Charlie's videos.
Thank you.
Cool. So thank you, everyone. And I've been Lit Bashing. As a verb and a noun. It's been lovely to have you all here. Please all like and subscribe to all of us, because endorphins and other things that are nice, like money. Thank you, everyone. You're all wonderful. I hope we do this again soon. I'm sure we will do an equivalent reaction next week as to what actually happened and what we think the impact of it on the game will be, which may very well be, so it was Fellblades. Yes, it was Fellblades. That's fun, isn't it? Yep, good, bye. But we'll still do it, and we'll think of something else nonsense to ramble about. I'd also like to thank my dog Fitz, who has been Andy's face model for this session, because he doesn't think he's pretty enough for the camera. We all disagree, but you know. Everyone write in the comment about how sexy you think Andy really looks, and he'll tell you if you're right.
We want pictures, hand-drawn pictures of Andy.
Yeah. We want fan art of what you think Andy looks like, and whoever is closest, I will personally buy a Titan for.
Can I enter?
8 mil scale. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. You're all wonderful. Thank you, all of you, for watching, liking, subscribing. Peace and love, as always. And keep on Hobbius novitiating, Tacticae Imperialising, model paint whatevering, and, of course, Lit Bashing.